Hi, I would like to welcome you today to our webinar on streamlining your budgeting process. I am Keith Greeno from Athena Solutions, and what I wanted to deal with today is just looking at the budgeting process that all businesses and nonprofits have to use, and just how to automate that and just make it a little bit easier. So for the agenda today, we're going to be discussing just current issues in the budgeting process. Then we just want to talk about the budget process flow and the steps involved. Then we're going to be going through just some of the options and how you can use various optional automation type solutions to help with all of the processes. And then finishing off with spending controls and how to use budgets more effectively to help us run our businesses and organizations on a day-to-day basis. And then discussing, is it right for you, and just the cost benefit of using these solutions and whether it makes sense for your organization or company. So what are some of the current issues in budgeting and planning? And so the biggest one is this data is decentralized. And so really what we're doing is we're trying to get budgets to create roadmaps to achieve our strategic goals. And with this decentralization, how the heck do we do that? Because we've got multiple spreadsheets which are all being linked together, or we have multiple, analysis of, inventory sales or customer sales, or we've got, how many people we're actually servicing in the nonprofit. But the bottom line is we have multiple spreadsheets being entered multiple times as far as data rekeying, right? It's difficult to analyze the data because we really have it all over the place. It's not all in one spot. We've got our accounting data. We've got these spreadsheets out there. And how do we collaborate? If we've got multiple department heads, how do we collaborate all of that together so that we can say, listen, wages are going up 3%. That's what the average is. Let's use it across the whole organization, and then it goes across all of the departments. And how do we do that with the decentralized accounting system or budgeting system? So major issue. The next one is lack of control. And so understanding is that when we're making budget changes, and so one of the department heads makes a change, how can we track that change? How do we control that they've got the right information? How do we make sure that the consolidations are all rolling up? How do we know that we've got all of that information in that budget when we actually finalize it? And so the bottom line is that Excel spreadsheets are not that secure, and they are really they're difficult to keep under control. There's a saying that's out there that says if you've been using a spreadsheet for more than 1 year, there's a 100% chance that there's an error in the spreadsheet. And I've looked at that for quite a while, and I tell you what, every time I see it, there's always seems to be the error in the spreadsheet. So lack of control is another big one. Now, on the budgeting, it takes too darn long. Lots of nonprofits, you talk to these, the controllers of a nonprofit, and they're talking about a 3 to 5 month cycle just to get all of the information together. And so you think about that, and so it's just a massive amount of time, a massive amount of energy being spent by all your department heads, being spent by your the controllers, being spent by all of the people inside those departments, trying to assimilate and bring all of this information together, and that simply takes too long. By the time you're done, you're almost into the new year, or you are starting so early that the planning becomes very, very inaccurate, which is the next one. Budgets aren't accurate. So if you are not consistently documenting information, like I said, if we're talking about salaries, everybody is saying, okay, 3% increase, how the heck do we have that information 3% across the line? You may have one department that comes up and says, no, I think it's going to be 4, and they'll put in 4 where it should be 3, and so the numbers become less accurate. And as you've got the various department heads, because one of the other problems is that you have the head controller actually doing the budgeting and then pushing it down to the managers. Therefore, they don't think that it's relevant to them because it wasn't information that they built, so therefore they don't use it. The other last one that's on here is budgeting is not timely. The bottom line is this, is that if you're spending 3 to 5 months building a budget, right? How can it be timely? How can you really make sure that you're using that information as effectively as possible? By the time you get it done, it's already out of date. And the bottom line is that your funding or programs, especially in the nonprofits, may not be based on a fiscal year, or you may have to go over multiple years. And if you're looking at only 1 year at a time or one fiscal period, then you do not have that information. Therefore, budgeting causes lots of point is this, is that what we want to look at now is just taking these issues in mind and keeping that in mind as we go through the various processes. Let's look at how automation can help solve a lot of these issues that are happening in our budgeting processes. So the next slide here, I mean, it doesn't have to be this way. I mean, I'm an anal retentive accountant, so I said be creative. I'm an accountant. I'm not a novelist. But the bottom end is that budgeting is a pain in the neck. We've got to understand that. Let's face that fact. And let's take a look at how we can make it just a little bit easier as far as running it on a day-to-day basis. So what's the budgeting process like? What we're talking about is really 6 steps, or 7 steps, I should say, in our budgeting process. And inside of here, really, the budgeting software can be this blue square in here. But what we want to do is we've got our accounting systems, and I believe, the world revolves around accounting. I'm an accountant, so I have to say that. But the bottom end is that we want to generate these worksheets. So right now we're doing that manually. How much time did it take you to get the information out of your accounting system to put it into your Excel spreadsheets to take a look at that, right? Because once all of that time is wasted if we can actually do it automatically. And the next one is then, okay, once we've got it in here, do we need multiple budgets? Do we need to send it off to multiple department heads for completion or divisions or whatever, right? But if yes, then we have to create multiple spreadsheets for this stuff to send it off. If we're doing only one spreadsheet, great. So now we start doing our budgeting processes. The next one is, do we need more detail than that? Do we want to break it down by item, by customer, by customer served? Do we want to, for nonprofits that are dealing with immigrants, how many immigrants are actually being served? Do we want to break it into more detail? And so again, it becomes another spreadsheet which has to link into this one, which all has to be rekeyed as you're putting it together. And then it's combining all of this budgeting information together. Now, taking a look at this from budgeting software, if it's automating all of these processes for you, it can save a significant amount of time. The next thing is at step 4, that's budgeting documentation and notes. And so every time, whether you're budgeting a detailed line item or you're budgeting at a consolidated level, you need to document all of the assumptions that you're making, and it needs to be embedded in that budget so that you can keep track of it, right? You need to be able to go back if we're making a change and make the change and all of it roll out. And then finishing that off is, once you've finished all of that clerical work, you've gone through, you've done all of this painstaking review of all of the expense lines or all of the detail, you finally got a completed budget. Now, how do we analyze all of that information in a timely fashion so that we can make sure that the budget is as accurate as possible? So then we can write it back into our accounting system, right? Because what we're talking about with the automation, we can move this straight back into our accounting system without having to rekey it. Right now, you're spending a significant amount of time having to re-enter that back into the accounting system and then generate reports out of that stuff. So this whole process, like I say, what we're going to be dealing with now is just the options for each one of this stuff. We're talking about the automation of this. And so when you're looking at it, just consider how much time it takes your individual companies to do step 1, step 2, step 2A, right, step 3, all the way through here. And this is really when we come to the end of this thing, when we're talking the return on investment. How we determine that is based on what the value is right now and what it's taking. Okay? So let's move into step 1, and we're talking about just the Orchid system. So with the Orchid system, really what we want to do is this. We want to go into the Orchid, and we're going to come up with a little bit of an analysis like this. It's going to say, great, what fiscal years do you want to bring in? I want 2020, 2022. So I basically select this. What the system will do is go into my accounting system and pull all of this information into this analysis cube called Orchid in one step. Okay? Now, understand, what we're looking at over here is formatting is critical of the way that you've got your financial statements configured. You want to make sure that the account groups, the accounts, and everything makes sense to you guys. You want to be able to put your divisions and regions or wherever you've got it divided up inside of your general ledger so that you can drag and drop, move this stuff around very, very easily. But the bottom end is it's got to be easy to move the information from accounting straight down into your budgeting tool, right? It needs to be real data, and we do not want to ever have to do any reentry of any of that information. And so with this Orchid tool, you can do that by clicking this, bringing in the information, and it's there. So then you've got it into a format which is really like a spreadsheet. Now let's look at another different version. This is the Sage Budgeting and Planning tool. Again, what it's got is this integration built into it. You can, again, select multiple years, right, or a specific year. You can select the various departments. But what it will do is it'll go into the accounting system and, again, grab all of that information in the formatting, the way that you built it, and bring it in so that now you've got that in a spreadsheet type format that you can start your budgeting process. Let's go a little bit further with this. And this is in budgeting and planning again. And so it will also and can go into your accounting system as far as the payroll and pull all of your payroll information into the system in detail. Why would it do that? Well, because really your salary is made up with a whole bunch of employees. And so if we've got the detail of the employees pulled in straight from your payroll system in a Sage system, then you would have all of the individuals in here. If you're giving them wage increases, it's going to increase. If you can add new hires for it, what it does is it gives you much more detail, right? Much more accurate information. But again, I don't want to put this detail information if I have to rekey it. So it's got to be easy to bring it in. It's got to be real data from the accounting system, and I don't want to re-enter the stuff. Okay? So let's go to step 2. Now what we're talking about is actually the preparation of a budget. And so, yes, we can do this with Excel where you're going in and you're doing your various analysis of stuff as far as the budgeting is concerned. But this gives you the availability of slicing and dicing the data as far as divisions or accounts, right? So the other thing is that you can come in here, how do I want to allocate these budgeting information? Do I want to do it evenly or proportionally? Do I want to use averages? Do I want to use percentage or increases or decreases or absolute dollar amount increases or decreases? And so the point being is I can select all of these tools and manipulate this budget in a much quicker way than I can with Excel. Now, why would I want to do that? Because I want the real data coming in here so I can compare it to the actual numbers, and I can slice and dice this data as far as what data, what fiscal year I want to compare it to. But what it does, it allows me to do that manipulation and all of that logistical stuff that happens when you're doing this budgeting as quickly as possible. So if we've got that in this Orchid system, what do we do over in this Sage budgeting? And so on the next screen, same kind of a deal. Now what we're doing is we're either looking at all of the departments or a single department. This is a single department that it's dealing with. But you can see what it's got is all of that same groupings again. It's got the same numbers, right? Over here, it's got formulas that are built in up on top. And again, we've got that same kind of cell formulas that we can build in like an Excel spreadsheet. And we can come in here and manipulate the columns, or we can manipulate the rows, or we can do a direct entry into an individual cell. But what it does is it allows you to have all of this information flowing all in at once. Now, what's the advantage of this stuff, right? Is this, if we've got it broken down to one department and I put the information in here, this also rolls straight up into my main accounting system. It rolls up so all of the detail is rolling up at the same time. I don't have to reconfigure or consolidate the information. So again, if this is being sent to a department head, this is all going out, right, and coming back into the system. No rekeying. All of the information is rolling up into the main accounting information for that particular expense. So let's just deal with it one more way in the step. And so step 2 being web budgeting, where you can actually, with the Sage Budgeting and Planning tool, send off this information to a particular department in a web format so that they can now come in here and do exactly the same thing. This is all modifiable by percentages or whatever. And so you can actually have them update it from the web, and then the information, again, goes right back into your accounting system or the budgeting system so that you can maintain and update your budget. So understand, so in step 2, we can do it with the Orchid system, or we can do it with the Sage budgeting tool, or we can do it with a web based on that same piece. Now let's go into the details. So step 3. So let's talk about Sage budgeting using the detail information. So what we're looking at is employees bringing in the information. Now you can see that what we've done in here is we've got like a default increase, 4.5%. Also, it's got by line item, you see where we've overridden that particular budget, but it's very clear which ones are overridden or not, right? And so it makes it clear from our point of view on exactly what information and what assumptions we're making. So you don't like this Patrick Miller, so you give him 4%, but you do like this Dan, looks like it, Wheelander, and we're giving him 8.5%. But you can see the assumptions. And whether this is, by customers that you're doing the same thing, or you're doing it by item number sales, or all of those other pieces that you can bring down in detail, you can, again, budget it across the system so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so what's this going to do for us, right? From the bottom end is we've got all of this detailed information, and this information is all going to roll up into a department salary, or it's going to roll up into the overall division salary. And so all of this detail makes things more accurate for us in the back office and speeds up the amount of computations that we have to make. So let's look at the next one, and we're talking about Orchid now. And so again, this is not exactly the data that comes in from Orchid, but we can go and grab, inventory by items and customers right out of your accounting system, the salespersons, or anything else that you want to do your budgeting by, and we can attach it to and link it to a particular account so that this particular information will roll up into another piece on another table. Now, this is in the Info Manager, not in the Info Explorer, but all it is it's just optional fields that can be accumulated. So again, what we can do is this is in the detail side of things to be able to collect it. Okay? Now let's talk briefly in the documentation. Now in the Orchid documentation, in the Info Manager, you can actually maintain information and documentation about a particular cell and or notes on the budget that you're building, and so you can embed it right into the budget so that you've got that. And that's one of those other issues that we're talking about. How do we maintain consistent information? How do we make sure that we do this timely? How do we make sure that the information is accurate? This helps with the accuracy. From the Sage budgeting and planning documentation, you can see that it's actually got inside of each line notes, right? Or you can attach a note onto a particular cell. And you see with what we've got in here, the cell notes. So if I've clicked on this, it opens up the cell note. If I click on this, it opens up the line notes. So this is talking about all of the assumptions and stuff that I've done for this line. This is the one for the particular cell. And so we can embed all of that documentation into the system. Now, when you're also doing this, you can see that the stuff in white is the stuff that's editable and the other stuff is not. And so we can control what we've got in these spreadsheets so that we've got the documentation and all of that information more accurate so that we've got that budgeting being done quicker. All right, so let's just talk about analysis on this stuff. And so with the budgeting tools, right? So we've got all of the budgeting information. We've gone through and we've done all of our, review of the budget. Now we can come back and start comparing it, right? And so with this analysis, we can change the years, we can change the periods, we can change all of the account groupings. We can only look at one division by taking this, moving it over, and dropping it over here. What it will do is it'll sort it by division. Or we can, go in here and change the amount of criteria that's in here for the fiscal year, and it'll put in multiple years if we want it to. But what you end up with is this. It gives you the availability of being able to look at your data from multiple views so that you can make this budget information more accurate. In here you're talking about, $1 million last year in actual, and we're only budgeting 467. Like, what the heck? But you can see that what they did is they made it equal for these months, and then it went up. But the bottom end is you can see the actual numbers are higher. So what the heck is going on, right? Maybe there has been a major change, but at least it highlights it for you. Okay? So let's go into the other one, because here's one of the steps in the Sage budgeting, which I think is very, very valuable. And what it can do with that particular solution, it's a different solution, obviously, but what it does is it can compare multiple budgets, right? So if you're looking at one budget and you want to compare it to the other, it will highlight exactly what the differences are in between the budgets and show you all of the numbers that are changed. And so you can see that it changed this 12, which means it changed this total, which changed that total, which changed the actual net. So this is very, very valuable when you're looking at multiple revisions of budgets and you want to just see and say, hey, this got changed, what happened, why it get changed, and which one is correct. So let's look at it from another analytical point of view. And so in the Orchid budget analysis, we can actually have graphs built into it. And so understanding with this stuff is the visual just gives you a little bit clearer view sometimes. But what we want to do is make it so that it makes sense to you guys when you're comparing salespeople, or maybe you've got the customers by sales, or whatever you want to compare, you can with this tool so that you can actually come up with more accurate budgeting. So let's go to step 6 then. What's that? And we're talking about it again. This is in the Orchid tool. And so really what happens is this, is that once you're done, this is like a spreadsheet that you've built into the system. So you've got all of this stuff you've gone through. So you've created a worksheet. You've gone through and you manipulated the worksheet and did all of the stuff to build the budget. You've done it in detail if you want to. It's all consolidated because it rolls up based on the account numbers. Here's the one with multiple departments, right? So all been rolled up into the system. I don't have to go back and look at that. I've already got all of the documentation. So if I want to look at my logic and why I did this, I can click on it and look at it. The next step is I've analyzed it. I've made sure that this budget is pretty close and I'm happy with the bottom end, right? You can see that I lost $97,000 here, but this year I'm going to make $135,000. Okay, great. No problem. I'm way happier with this budget. But, so what I can do now is hit this button and say, okay, write it back into my accounting system. I don't want to have to re-enter any of that information. All I have to do is push the button. We can do this multiple times because understand, all we're going to do is overwrite that budget again and again until you're completely happy. But the bottom end is you want to try to finish the analytical stuff, then roll it up and do it, only a few times to bring it back into your accounting system. But really, it doesn't matter how many times this is done. But in the Sage system itself, and we'll just show you that in the next screen here, you can actually maintain in the Sage 300 system up to 5 different budget sets for each year. And so you can have budget set 1, budget set 2. So you got a budget for your board and you got a budget for the bank. You can send it off to different people, same thing, and you can do the comparison right in your financials. Okay? And that's the next one. What is number 7 in that step? And that's this reporting engine. And so out of the Sage 300 accounting system, we can actually have it set up where in the financials we've got all budget information across. So if we look, this is a fiscal year end, which is actually a calendar year end as well. But from January to December is in here. We've got the year end totals. We can see what the total is going to be for the year. We've got the running totals. So all of that stuff can be built right out of your accounting system from the Sage system with the budgeting tool being used. Okay? So if this is done, what do we do with this stuff? So this is where we can send off the budgets to the individuals. They can look, and have all of the color and anything else that you want in here that you want to have set up. But it really creates that very, very quick, easy, so that you've got that budgeting information at your fingertips that you can send off. But let's go to the next step. And so really what we want to do, let's go further with this budgeting. Let's say, okay, now what are we going to do with it? Because budgets are useless unless you're doing something with it that makes better decisions for your organization or company. So let's take a look at this continuous budgeting. So in here, what we're talking about is if we're at the April year end, or at April month end, I should say, right? And we say, okay, here's the real numbers that are happening at the end of April. Then what it does is it takes all of the budget information from here and moves it forward. Now, I've cut this off. It really should have the totals out in here somewhere. But the bottom end is, what it will do is it'll say, okay, here's the current actuals, right? Here's what we budgeted for. Therefore, at the end of August, this is what the actual totals will be. Now, this is not a full year, obviously, but it could be easily. The point being is that this is continuously budgeting so that when you finish January, you can actually do January the next year. And when you finish February, you do February the next year. So this thing is continually moving along. So with this type of a system, it doesn't matter whether you're doing budgeting for something that doesn't match your fiscal period. You can still do it. You just bring in the new periods and you just keep rolling it out. What it does is it really helps us by allowing us to look forward. Have you ever tried driving a car in the rearview mirror? That's using financial statements. Budgeting is the only place where we're actually looking forward and we're trying to make sure that what's going to happen in the changing environments, what's going to happen and maybe where the revenue is going up or down or maybe something else is happening. But this is what gives us the tools to help us make better decisions. Okay, let's take a look at some other tools that are out there from the budgeting. So once we've gone through, we've used these automation tools to actually create these budgets again. What else can we do with them? Well, there's tools out there as well called with fund control. And so there's a fund availability type module which is available for the Sage 300, which you can go through there and you can control how much is your budget amount, what's the actuals, commitments if you're using purchase orders, what is total available, negative, 20,000, right? And you've got approval about this. So this is completely insane, but this can certainly happen with some companies and nonprofits. And so what we're trying to do is stop that overspending that we're talking about and save you guys money, which is going to help the profitability for your organizations. And so when we're looking at this particular module, all the time is the real-time information is coming in, but you need the budgets to start with, right? And so once we've got the budgets and they're accurate, then this system is driving it and showing you where the issues are. Now, let's take that a step further. And so if we get into the availability, is understanding is that we can, with purchase order workflows or various other purchase order things, stop the system from allowing you from even spending the money. And this is where it really starts to benefit nonprofits, because you tend to have the division or department managers, they've overspent for the first 3 months, but they think that the budget is all written in stone and they can still keep spending that same amount each month because that's what's budgeted. The bottom line is they can't because they've already overspent in the prior 3 months. This system will stop it. Available to spend is minus 24, and without specific approval, special approval, they are not able to purchase on a purchase order, or they're not able to actually enter it as an invoice. Now, the problem is with purchasing on an invoice, obviously the horse is already gone a little bit because you've actually got the invoice coming in from a vendor, and it's pretty tough not to pay them. But these systems will stop it if you want, and you can see all of the approvals that have happened by each line item, by each department head on what's going on. Okay? So if you're using fund availability or a budgeting workflow type systems, it can certainly maintain far tighter controls over your organizations. And then the one last one that comes into here is the commitment accounting. And again, this is more for the nonprofits, but all it does is it just takes what have you actually spent, which is invoices out there, and what are the commitments that the department heads or the individual has committed to with a purchase order out there. And it takes the overall item that's budget available, this minus $3,400, and it can, of course, can alert you to that and say, yes, this has been exceeded, stop, right? So there's multiple tools. So we got the commitment accounting, we got the funds availability, and we got the purchase order workflow that can be used. So we've gone through this fairly quickly, but we wanted to try to keep this into a half an hour. But which of the options is right for you? And really what happens is this. It depends on what are the costs, and in the meantime, if you don't have automation tools, how much is it going to cost you because of overspending in various departments if you do not have the budgeting tools in place? You guys need to look at your own organization, look at that budget process, flow those 7 steps, and just say manually, what is it costing me to put this together, and how much would I be able to save if I put this into a automation tool? Understand, I mean, we're not a very large company, but even in our particular company, it probably saves me 2 days in budgeting by using the Orchid tool, which is a simpler one. But it's simply just bring the information, I do the budget manipulations, I'm happy with the budget, and I write it back into the accounting system so I can continue on and do other stuff. But what are the cost implications of not having budget processes in place, right? From a nonprofit, it could be your accreditation rating, where you're no longer accredited because you're no longer controlling costs adequately. Or from a business, it might just be reduced profits overall, or you might have department heads which are just clearly out of control. But then what are the potential benefits of actually having those processes in place? And it's really this better decision making. And that's what we're trying to do with these budgeting systems is, as a management organization, where we're trying to promote better management, is making better decisions, and budgeting is certainly one of the tools with some of these other add-on pieces that does that. So is it right for you? It depends. And so once you take a look at these costs, then you can sit down and say, okay, what does it cost for the budgeting tool? And does it make sense for us to move ahead with one of these? So from there, what we want to do is just finish off with some questions. Again, I apologize for going through fairly quickly, but we wanted to keep this into a 30-minute webinar just on how the budgeting can help you out. And I think if you look at this stuff, it clearly can make a significant difference to your organizations in reducing costs and keeping things under control. Thank you.